Hello everyone, welcome to another Narc Survivor live video. In this one we're going to be talking about why narcissists withhold sex, why they stop having sex with you. Because clearly there is something going on. It seems like they don't want or they don't like sex. And it's because here's what you got to understand. I mean, for you, someone who is relatively emotionally and sexually healthy, sex is simple. It's not complicated. It's just a simple activity because there's not really so much trauma involved surrounding sex. Well, as for narcissists, it's very different because there is trauma involved and they're emotionally and sexually unhealthy. So narcissists can have complex and varied relationships with sex, which may cause them to not want or not like it. However, of course, this does depend on the type of narcissist and their motivations, because yes, there are some narcissists out there who are hypersexual and they may want sex multiple times a day. It may be too much, they may just exhaust you. But then also, of course, there are other narcissists who are pretty much asexual. While us as humans, I mean, we're sexual beings, asexual narcissists are just not really like human. So, yeah, there are some narcissists who may appear disinterested or disengaged from sex. And it may be because they view sex as a tool rather than as an emotional connection. What you're going to understand with narcissists is that their needs always come first. It's always about their interests. Remember, they're self-absorbed. It's all about them. It doesn't matter about anyone else. And narcissists want power, validation, and control. And they may not be able to get that if they present it more as an intimate, emotional experience. So for them, they use it to serve their goals. And if it doesn't serve their goals of power, validation, or control, then they might not be interested in it. However, if a narcissist, and this is why some narcissists are hypersexual, the grandiose, overt, somatic, if they're having sex all the time, they are going to gain power. They are going to gain validation. They are going to gain control. So they will be having a lot of sex with you. Those types of narcissists. But the ones who can't really gain the power, validation, or control by having sex with you, then they're going to lose interest in it. I'd also consider as well that narcissists have a fear of vulnerability. Now, sex is it's an activity that involves emotional intimacy and vulnerability. Two things that narcissists avoid because it threatens their ego and defense mechanisms. It makes them feel less important because then they're bonding with you. They're opening up to you and sharing with you. But if they withhold it, then it makes them feel more important, as though then they're separate from you. So it's kind of like in Sam Vaknin's dual mothership theory, where initially they bond with you, they view you as the mother, and then they want to individuate, they want to separate themselves from you, because then in that separation it makes them feel more important, it feeds their ego. But especially with that fear of vulnerability, that can be just a reason on its own why they will distance themselves from any situation that requires genuine emotional openness. And also, some narcissists are grandiose, they have unrealistic standards. So they may have these inflated standards for their sexual partners, to where they may dismiss or devalue those who don't meet their idealized expectations, to where they may then have a reduced sexual activity or interest. This is very common among sociopaths and psychopaths. And let's not forget that all narcissists have a lack of empathy. They cannot empathize with you. And that's why they won't prioritize your sexual needs or desires, because it's all about them. It's all about what they want. So for them, it may be just too much of an effort. It's just an obligation. So it's not important for their self-image. And this is why many narcissists, they may just masturbate or watch pornography, because it's just so much effort for them, to be physical, sexual with you. And they may see it as though it's so much easier just to watch pornography or masturbate, and then also that ties in with their grandiosity and unrealistic standards. I mean, when they're locked into pornography and they're masturbating, whether it's a man or a woman, because women watch pornography too, and women masturbate as well. So whether it's a man or a woman, it's very difficult, if not impossible, for reality to compete with that grandiosity and the unrealistic standards which can be fulfilled with pornography. And that may be what truly fulfills their sexual needs or desires, rather than it being a physical partner. Because of course, I mean, and I've spoken about this before, like narcissists, they despise the human condition. And you may take very good care of yourself. You may be a very beautiful person, but the narcissist, when they look at people, they're seeing all of the things that are wrong. They're very negative and pessimistic. So there could be a window with a really beautiful view. It could be the most spectacular view. But maybe it hasn't been cleaned for a few hours, so there's a few specks of dust on the window. Never mind the view, it could be a view of the Grand Canyon. The narcissist will only see the specks of dust on the window. That's what they're like. And so, even though you may take good care of yourself, the narcissist, it's like their reticular activating system, the RAS of the brain, it's just scanning everything for problems. So they can only see everything that they think is wrong with you. And of course, we all have flaws. We all have things that may not be perfect about ourselves. We all have imperfections. I mean, sometimes we may have acne. We may have scars, bruises. All of this is a turn-off for a narcissist. And yet, some of us, we wonder why they withhold sex, why they're addicted to pornography or their grandiose fantasies. This is a big part of the reason why. And also, they have a grandiose fantasy of their own, of themselves. They view themselves as perfect. And as long as they're separate from you, it can continue to validate the illusion. But then when they're sexually involved with you, the illusion falls apart. Because by bonding with you, then they then begin to view themselves as they actually are. And also, many narcissists will use sex as a form of control. They will avoid having sex to manipulate you. And also to dominate you, to punish you, and to make you emotionally dependent on them. Because some narcissists, I mean, especially covert narcissists, they're not going to get that same level of control. They're not going to be able to dominate or create that emotional dependency from having sex with you. And they may be aware of that, which is why they will withhold it instead. Because deep down, they do have these psychological issues and maybe physical issues as well. It's very common in narcissists, such as a low libido, where they don't have that desire for sex, and sexual dysfunction. This is common in women as well as men, especially with narcissists and their unresolved trauma. This affects their libido, their sexual functionality, their sexual performance, and all of these things combined, of course, contribute to their disinterest in sex. Because they're not a healthy person, they don't have sexual health, they don't have physical and mental health, they have trauma. So they're sexually and mentally unhealthy, which causes them to not desire to want sex, because, you know, this is just, it's a part of our evolution. We evolved to be this way, where if a human is mentally, emotionally, and sexually unhealthy, as a part of our evolution and of natural selection, it lowers our libido and affects our sexual performance, so that we don't procreate and spread those genes. So in many ways, it's part of the evolution in a narcissist, is that they're not meant to want it, they're not meant to desire to have sex for that reason. While you desire it, you want it, and they're the ones withholding it from you, because it's just a part of our evolution and of procreation. It's kind of like you're meant to mate, they're not. And when you begin to see it that way, it begins to make more sense, because, you know, that's why they're mentally and sexually unhealthy, and perhaps that's why they don't even self-reflect to even decide to change anything about themselves. But then also on the surface, they do have a preoccupation with appearance and performance. And sex can cause them a lot of anxiety, because they're afraid of being judged. They're afraid of failing to meet their expectations or your expectations. And because there's so much pressure on their performance, it may just lead them to just avoid it altogether. It may feel better for them just to avoid it, because all of the fear and anxiety and the fear of rejection as well But remember again, I mean, not all narcissists will avoid or dislike sex, especially grandiose narcissists. They can be highly sexually active, and because, of course, there are grandiose narcissists who are high performers in sex, they will use sex as a way to gain validation from you and to exert control over you, because they can, because they have the power to do that, and they know they have the power to do it. That's why they're so arrogant about it, because they know they can use sex to get you hooked, and many of them do. But with the covert narcissists, I would say that's less likely to happen, because they may not have that high libido, that high sex drive, and that skilled performance that we see with the grandiose narcissists. But the reality is that narcissists are more prone to having a low libido and to having sexual dysfunction. That is, people who are self-absorbed, lacking empathy, exploitative. These types of people are going to be more prone to having a low libido and sexual dysfunction. And it's because of their unresolved childhood trauma. This affects their sexual performance. Again, of course, this is not for all narcissists. Grandiose narcissists are different. It's typically the ones who are insecure, the ones who they're not confident in their sexual abilities, or deep down they know that they can't perform as well as you want them to. So it's a confidence issue with a lot of them. And of course, that can be true for anyone, is that it all begins with your confidence, your self-belief. I mean, that can affect your performance in anything more than anything else. But yeah, narcissists, they do have childhood trauma, which results in psychological defenses, and these influence relationship dynamics. Many narcissists may experience performance anxiety, because for them it's all about maintaining a perfect self-image rather than about connection. So this anxiety about their sexual performance may result in erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, or a lack of arousal. And another thing you will witness from a narcissist is emotional detachment. They will be emotionally detached, and it can feel like you're laying next to a corpse. It's like you're laying next to a dead body. It's like physically they're there, but it doesn't really feel like they're there. It doesn't feel like you're with a real man or a real woman. You just don't get that feeling from them. It just feels dead, empty, lifeless. And that's because it's all emotion. I mean, that's a big part of it, in that attraction and that chemistry, is the emotion. And that's what narcissists are deficient in. I mean, they may have feelings for themselves, where they're exploiting people and they get that duper's delight, they get that joy. It's just all about themselves. They may feel great when they're deceiving you and when they're withholding sex from you, but still that emotion is going to be detached from you. So because of that, because they're uncomfortable with emotional intimacy, it will reduce their ability to connect sexually to you, which can manifest as a lack of desire or difficulty achieving satisfaction. And as I mentioned, many narcissists may just view sex as a tool to manipulate you and have power over you, because sex may not align with their immediate goals. So they may just avoid it or disengage, which can appear as them having a low libido. But it may just be that maybe they're in survival mode and they're just seeking to get something from you. And maybe they can't get that from you. So then they'll just avoid it because that's what they're more focused on. Is maybe money or power. So they will manipulate people to get that from them. But yeah, you're going to find that they are going to have these issues around sex because they have mental health issues. Many narcissists are depressed. They experience high anxiety. And many of them engage in substance abuse, and all of these things negatively affect their sexual performance and desire. If you're finding this video helpful so far, please give it a thumbs up. Now, I know I've talked about how narcissists have childhood trauma and how this affects their sexual performance. So I'm going to go deeper into that now. Because the reality is that childhood trauma is a significant factor in the development of their narcissistic traits. And it does have a profound impact on their sexual behavior and functioning. So their sexual function and behavior, or lack of, is the result of emotional neglect and abuse. Because many of these narcissists, they grew up in environments where their emotional needs were ignored or invalidated, to where they then developed a fear of intimacy and vulnerability, which are two things that are essential for healthy sexual relationships. And typically what happens is, as a result of this childhood trauma, they then experience over or under sexualization, especially if they experienced inappropriate sexual exposure, abuse, or neglect during childhood. All of these things can affect the child and their development to where it can distort their understanding of healthy sexual boundaries and intimacy, to where it can then manifest as hypersexuality in more grandiose, overt narcissists or psychopaths, or in your regular narcissist or covert narcissist. It tends to be more sexual avoidance. Not always, but it tends to be. But yeah, these traumatic experiences in their childhood, it creates attachment issues to where they're then wary of closeness. They have difficulty trusting people because they've been rejected, invalidated, abused in childhood, which then hinders the sexual intimacy and satisfaction. Other than some grandiose narcissists and some psychopaths, most narcissists are just full of shame and low self-worth. Yes, they may seem outwardly confident, but underneath that, deep down, they feel inadequate. And it's their childhood trauma which amplifies these feelings, which then leads to sexual performance issues, which is really just rooted in shame and self-doubt. So their trauma affects their sexual performance, to where in some situations it can produce hypersexuality, to where some narcissists will use sex to regulate their self-esteem and to prove their worth through conquest or validation from partners. And again, that's typically among overt narcissists, and especially psychopaths. I think we all know the classic scenes that you see with like a psychopath in a tuxedo at a bar and seducing a girl. They tend to be more hypersexual. They use sex to regulate their self-esteem. Whereas those that are more covert, those that are more vulnerable, insecure, shy even, those types of narcissists are going to have an avoidance or an asexuality, where they will become disconnected from their sexual needs due to fear, repression, or a lack of emotional safety. So it's because they're afraid. It's because they're insecure. That's a big part of it. And this comes back to their childhood trauma, to where they then have a need for power and control. They can't just let go. They can't just be themselves. And instead they use sex as a tool for dominating you, or to withhold it as punishment. So if you are having sex with a narcissist, they're going to be dominating you. If you're not having it, then it's a punishment for you. And it's because they're afraid, they're insecure. They act tough on the outside, but really it's like a mouse looking in the mirror seeing a lion, or a cat even, a cat looking in the mirror seeing a lion. That's what it's really like for them. That's why they have to act all tough, all high and mighty, and it's all about power and control, domination, because inside they feel so small. Now, people who are secure within themselves, people who are strong and really powerful, they don't have to control anyone. They don't have to dominate anyone. They can just give you space to be yourself. But also, it's difficult for us to do that around narcissists, because then they take advantage of that. But yeah, I mean, I know it can be confusing. I know it can seem strange. I know it can lead you to want to seek answers, because it's like, what is going on? I mean, it may not be something that you've experienced before. Why are they withholding sex? Why are they using it to punish you? And you're trying to make sense of it. You're trying to understand what is it about you? And you're left feeling puzzled. You can't find the answers. And a lot of times it's just because this is a reenactment of their trauma. Because of their unresolved trauma, it leads to unhealthy or repetitive sexual behaviors, which is just reflecting their past experiences. So physically they're there in the present moment, but mentally they're still somewhere in the past. They're in some other situation years, decades ago. They're not with you in the present moment. So they're too much in their heads, not enough in their hearts, not enough in their bodies. It means they're not really there, they're dissociating. And then they project that onto you. They want to live out their unresolved trauma with you, only this time with them being on the end of it, because nothing makes them feel better than that, than to watch someone else going through it. But yeah, let's get a bit deeper into this now. Those of you who are still watching this long, you may want to know more about this and what's really going on. How does these mental health issues affect their body? Because of course, our minds and our bodies are connected; they're not separate. And in order to be healthy sexually, we need to be healthy mentally. Our mental health will affect us sexually because it's all connected in our bodies. So of course, their mental health issues affect their sexual organs. It affects their physical health because there is a connection between the psychological and physiological processes, which then may indirectly impact you, because it's also transferring negative energy, emotions, and trauma to you. Narcissists are experiencing psychological distress. They're experiencing stress and anxiety because this is very common in individuals with narcissistic traits. Narcissists who are self-absorbed, lacking empathy, that it's all about themselves, they're exploitative, even grandiose. These types of people often suffer with stress and anxiety, which can lead to erectile dysfunction, reduced libido, or even a difficulty achieving orgasm. I remember this is common among women as well as men, because it's the stress hormones in the body, the cortisol. This has a negative effect on their blood flow, hormonal balance, and thus their overall sexual performance. There's also psychosomatic effects as a result of their emotional repression, their unresolved trauma, and their narcissistic offenses. This can manifest physically. Yes, the emotional repression and their narcissistic egotistical defenses have a physical effect on their bodies, to where it can cause pelvic tension, pain, and other sexual health issues. Narcissists are often prone to conditions like depression and even substance abuse, because then they're seeking something to lift them up, to elevate them, which actually just further impairs their sexual health, such as antidepressants or alcohol misuse. This can reduce a person's sexual desire and cause performance issues. And all of this, I believe, can have an emotional and energetic impact on their partners. I mean, if we're going off the science of it, science and psychology may say that there is no direct transfer of trauma or emotions in a biological way. But what do you think about that from your own personal experience? Do you not feel like there is a transfer of their trauma, their emotions coming on to you? Because remember, I mean, when you're with a narcissist, DNA is being shed. Parts of them is being shared with you. So, but the science says that, there is no direct transfer of trauma or emotions in a biological sense, biologically, in a physical way. However, emotions are contagious. And this is proven in psychology, that narcissists, their negative emotions, their anger, frustration, and shame can deeply affect their partners, who might then absorb these feelings over time. And this is known as emotional contagion, which can lead to stress, anxiety, or even physical symptoms in the partner. So this emotional contagion, they affect your emotions as a result of their negative emotions, which can then lead to physical symptoms in you. And also narcissists and their trauma bonding, they can develop a trauma bond, a psychological attachment, which they form through cycles of abuse and affection. And this bond can leave you feeling drained, confused, and emotionally compromised. What you will find is, even when there is a sexual interaction with the narcissist, it just feels emotionally empty, or as though you're being manipulated. They just leave you feeling used and invalidated, because there is a lack of a mutual connection. So you may then experience feelings of inadequacy or emotional depletion, because you have been depleted emotionally. And they've robbed you of your characteristics, your confidence, your happiness, your joy, your drive. They've just robbed you of all of that. And in these interactions, the narcissist may also project their unresolved trauma onto you, to where you may then experience a secondary trauma, which is a reaction to being exposed to someone else's emotional pain. So, I mean, as for a negative energy transfer, now that is not measurable scientifically. But I think it is something that we can all resonate with, in how their behavior affects us psychologically and emotionally. Because what you will find is that you do feel emotionally exhausted, or even physically unwell. And this is caused by the constant manipulation, gaslighting, and the lack of empathy, which can cause physical stress symptoms. It can elevate your stress levels. It can lead to physical symptoms such as fatigue, headaches, digestive issues, or a lowered libido in you. So you can begin to experience the same symptoms that they experience just by you being around them. So essentially, it's like a disease of the body and mind. But more spiritually, I mean, sexual intimacy is often seen as an exchange of energy, to where the narcissist's unresolved trauma or their emotional toxicity feels like it's being transferred to you, which then leaves you emotionally burdened. If you're finding this video helpful so far, please give it a thumbs up down below. Let's get this video out there to more people who may be going through this, who may be wondering what's going on. Why is this narcissist withholding sex? Why are they physically present? Why are they there? Why are they in the relationship? But then at the same time, they're withholding this specific part of themselves. And they're still expecting you to perform in many other different ways for them. But yeah, now we're going to go through a very different and interesting concept that I have come up with, and I've never seen anyone talk about this before. I've never seen anyone relate the withholding of sex to this type of concept. But I think it's really going to make you rethink this. It's really going to make it make a lot more sense to you. Because you've got to look at it like this. Narcissists are not only emotionally underdeveloped, but sexually underdeveloped as well. So just how they can't emotionally connect to you, they can't sexually connect to you because they're not sexually developed. And essentially it's the same thing as how children are not interested in sex. And what you may find with your children, maybe they ask questions and you talk to them about it, and they just think that sex is disgusting. They have a very childish, immature response to it. They can't take it seriously. They just think, it's a joke, and it's, of course, children don't have an interest in sex. It's not something they think about. It's not something they want. And that's normal. Of course, it's supposed to be that way. But where it's not normal is when we're talking about adults. Because adult humans, of course, we are sexual beings. And yet, some narcissists show signs of emotional and sexual underdevelopment. And this contributes to their attitudes towards sex and intimacy. Very similar to a child, and this is why many of us, we liken narcissists to children stuck in adult bodies who just haven't developed. They haven't arrested emotional development. And this stems from their childhood experiences, where they may have faced emotional neglect, trauma, or stunted growth, especially in areas related to emotional and relational maturity. So they're still stuck at a certain age as a child in their minds. And this is how you may see this emotional immaturity and sexual development from them, which is very much like a child. They're very emotionally immature, which parallels the way that children approach emotions and relationships. Now, of course, for a child, that's normal because they're not fully developed, and they're not meant to be fully developed yet. It's a process for them. It takes time. But for adults, at the age that we are, they should be developed by then, and they're not. They show a fear of intimacy. They can't engage in emotional closeness because it requires vulnerability, which is something that narcissists struggle with. So just like a child, they shy away from deep emotional or physical intimacy. And it's because it feels threatening or overwhelming for them. And again, just like a child, narcissists have underdeveloped empathy. So just as children are naturally egocentric, at least until they develop empathy, narcissists remain stuck in this self-centered emotional state, which hinders healthy sexual and emotional relationships. And another similar trait, just like a child, They engage in black and white thinking. Children see the world in extremes. So the narcissist may view sex as either idealized, perfect, or devalued and disgusting, which can lead to inconsistent attitudes towards intimacy. So you see how it's really just, it's a child stuck in an adult's body. And yet we wonder why they're so sexually and emotionally immature, and why they show disinterest, why they withhold sex, why everything's a game, why they use it to punish you or to dominate you, why they're all about themselves, why they're so egotistical. Because it's just a child in an adult's body. And it's the same thing in any part of the relationship. But especially when it comes to sex, because this is very particular, is that the child is not emotionally and sexually developed. They're not ready for sex. And just as the narcissist is not ready for sex, because they have an arrested emotional development, they're not fully developed yet. Or if they were to go within, self-reflect and heal themselves, then they could become sexually developed. They could be appropriate for sexual activity. And this is why there's this sexual disinterest, this aversion, because of their unresolved developmental issues, to where they just avoid sexual contact, sexual interest as a result of their childhood trauma, their sexual abuse and neglect. Because they associate sex with fear, shame, or disgust, which leads to a stunted sexual outlook. Their emotional growth was arrested at a very young age due to unmet needs or abuse. And this is why they cannot develop a healthy adult perspective on sex and relationships. So, yeah, I mean, just like children, I mean, there's the idealization and the devaluation. Some narcissists, as I spoke about earlier, they despise the human condition. They may see sex as dirty or beneath them. Just like how children just naturally express disgust about sexual topics. But with children, that's normal, that's natural. It's not a bad thing if your child thinks that sex is disgusting, if they're at a very young age, because they don't have that level of understanding, they're not mature yet. But of course, with narcissists, then it's not normal. It doesn't make any sense. At least it doesn't make any sense until you understand that there's a child in an adult's body. They're underdeveloped. And yeah, this is how they have these narcissistic defense mechanisms, especially surrounding sexuality. This is to protect their fragile self-esteem, which does have an influence on their sexual and emotional lives. Narcissists fear rejection. Again, just like a child who avoids situations that might result in failure, narcissists may avoid sex altogether to protect themselves from the potential embarrassment or inadequacy that they associate with it. And also because of the control and power dynamics. However, this is where they are unlike a child, because as you may notice with your children, they probably ask a lot of questions, maybe not just about sex, but just about life in general. They have this childlike curiosity about them. Now with narcissists, this is where narcissists and children differ very greatly. Because narcissists do not approach sex with curiosity or mutual enjoyment. They don't approach anything with curiosity. They're missing that childlike part of them. So instead, they just reduce sex down to a tool for control or validation. They just bypass the emotional aspects entirely. And instead, what they do is they just project and shame you. They put their unresolved feelings of shame and inadequacy onto you. Whether they'll just treat sex as being dirty or they'll just avoid it entirely to maintain their self-image. I mean, yeah, you're going to see that there are signs of stunted emotional and sexual development in narcissists. They will exhibit behaviors that suggest underdevelopment. Many of them may have inappropriate sexual boundaries. They may behave in ways that are either hypersexual or asexual, to where it reflects a lack of understanding of healthy sexual norms. They may also avoid emotional closeness. They may avoid emotional intimacy entirely. They may rely on superficial relationships to fulfill their needs. And they may show these childlike responses, where they have these immature reactions to sex, such as giggling, overreacting, expressing discomfort when the topic arises. All of these things indicate unresolved emotional growth. So where do we go from here? What can they do about this? They need to focus on their healing, their growth. They need to develop a healthier relationship with sex and emotions. They need to address their underlying development and emotional issues. But the reality is that this is likely to never happen because they resist acknowledging their vulnerabilities or seeking help. So they're very likely to have these sexual issues for the rest of their lives. They're always going to be that way. They're never going to grow out of it. I mean, in some situations, what we can see is that some narcissists may develop sexual maturity possibly in their 30s, around that time. They may become more sexually mature. That can happen sometimes. But typically, I mean, past that point, it's already too late. It's like the old saying goes, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But yeah, I mean, we've talked enough about the narcissist. Please give this video a thumbs up if you've found it helpful so far as well. But yeah, we talked enough about the narcissist. I mean, of course, it's always all about them. So we want to figure it out. We want to understand what's going on. Since everything's all about them and they're like this spoiled brat who has to be the center of attention at all times. And they play the victim and it's always some problem to do with them. So we've dealt with that now. We've talked about the narcissist. But what about you? Because, of course, being with a narcissist, some narcissists at least, being with some narcissists can be sexually frustrating and dissatisfying, because their behavior typically leads to a lack of intimacy, connection, and mutual satisfaction, to where you may feel ignored, invalidated, or manipulated. However, there are things that you can do to navigate these challenges. And it begins by understanding the situation. You have to acknowledge these dynamics, recognize that their sexual and emotional behaviors are a reflection of their unresolved issues, not your worth or attractiveness. And again, this is just like a child. They're so emotionally mature. It's kind of like, they've got a problem, there's an issue with them. It's like a child has fallen down and scathed their knee. And now it's your fault. As the parent, you have to deal with it. It's your responsibility. It's your duty. Or maybe the baby soiled its nappy. Now you have to wipe it up. You have to change the nappy. It's the same thing with a narcissist. It's like they've soiled their nappies, or they've fallen over and grazed their knee, and now they're coming to you for you to sort it out. You see how this is connected. You see how this reveals that they have an arrested emotional development. They're not sexually or emotionally developed. They need a parent, a caretaker, someone to take care of them, because they're still a child stuck in an adult's body. They can't take care of themselves. They can't deal with adult responsibilities. But they find a way to twist and project it onto you by pretty much just dumping all of the duties and responsibilities onto you, so that you just collapse under the immense pressure of it all. Because of course, one person can't deal with everything. You can't deal with everything for yourself and your life and everyone else's problems as well. No one person can deal with that. But that's what they expect of you. And, with a child, when you're dealing with a child, yes, you can take care of them. You can help them to grow and develop, because the child is submissive to you. They follow your lead. So of course you can take charge in that situation. Problem with a narcissist, the child in an adult body narcissist, the emotional toddler, is that they want all of the power in the situation but no accountability, which is a recipe for a disaster. It's a means to an end. You can't help them because they want you to submit to them and also serve them and help them with everything. But you have no power over anything, so it's impossible. They have to sit down. They have to be the child. If they want you to take care of them, if they want you to change their nappies every day, if they want you to comfort and soothe them whenever they fall over and they get a boo-boo, then you need to have some authority. You need to have some power in that situation. If you're being held accountable for everything, you can't be deprived of power and authority and yet at the same time be held accountable for everything. That makes no sense, because it's impossible. There's nothing you can do about it. So how can you be held accountable for it? You can't. That means that in that type of situation where you have no power, control, or authority, that means that you're not accountable for anything. If you don't even have you have no power over what they're doing to you or how they're affecting you, and you're double-minded, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You have no accountability for anything because you can't even control any of it. It's like no matter what you do, no matter where you go, no matter what happens, no matter how much you change or improve yourself, the results are still the same. So you're not held accountable for anything. It's like you're immune to it all. Now, this is just what happens. This is the type of situation that they put you and themselves in, to where really they are accountable for everything, including your reactions, because it's reactive abuse, and they push you to the point where you're really damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, you can't do anything. So you're helpless, you're hopeless in that situation. But you got to recognize that this is all a reflection of their unresolved issues. And it's not anything to do with your worth or your attractiveness. And, this is it. Sometimes we wonder what is going on. Like, how can you be, you're worth something to other people, you're attractive to other people, not to the self-absorbed narcissist. You're not worth anything or attractive to them, especially sexually. But that's because it's a reflection of their unresolved issues. And this is how you can be worth something and attractive to other people, just not them, because they have unresolved issues. So you need to separate reality from manipulation, because they will gaslight you, they will manipulate you, they will make you question your needs. So you need to understand that your sexual and emotional needs are valid. And of course they are, because your sexual and emotional needs are human needs. Just as you need food, you need water to survive. Without it, you will die. It's the same thing with your sexual and emotional needs. Without it being fulfilled, you will die. And it's not that you're going to instantly die physically, but you will die slowly. It will traumatize you. It will affect you negatively. It will harm you. It's abuse. So your sexual and emotional needs are valid. And this is why, this really depends on how high on the spectrum they are. But if you're dealing with someone who maybe just has a few narcissistic traits and they're not fully disordered, you could try prioritizing communication to where you then express your needs and you're clear and direct about your desires and expectations in a relationship, to where you can use I statements and you express your emotions, your experience, to where you can say, I feel disconnected when we don't engage emotionally during intimacy. And you can then set boundaries. If they dismiss or invalidate your needs, you can set firm boundaries about what you will and won't tolerate, because they will blame and shame you. They will make you feel like it's all your fault, that they're broken, that they have sexual performance issues, that they have low libido, they're asexual. They will make you feel like that's your fault. And this is what they do because they lack self-awareness. They're disconnected from themselves. They're disconnected from their emotions. And yet we wonder why they withhold sex, because they're not even there. And this is really a red flag for you to pay attention to, because it's like, the way they dismiss and validate your needs and they project their emotional issues onto you, making you feel like it's your fault, that they can't function properly the way that they should as a human being. They can't be intimate with you. They project that onto you because they're disconnected from themselves. They lack self-awareness. They don't even see themselves. They're not even aware of themselves. So they can barely even see or be aware of you. But yeah, what you want to do is when you express your needs and you set boundaries, is you need to gauge their response, because some narcissists may respond positively to open communication, while others may react defensively. And again, this typically depends on how confident they are. So, but those narcissists who may be more overt, maybe more grandiose, they may respond more positively to open communication. But those who are more hidden and covert, those who have a lot of shame and they have a lot to hide, they're going to be more defensive towards you, more about protecting themselves, because they've got something to hide there, so they don't want to be vulnerable. But yeah, you need to focus on your own well-being. Focus on building your self-esteem, because narcissists will often erode their partner's confidence. They will drag you down. So you need to engage in activities that make you feel good about yourself and rebuild your sense of self-worth, not break it down. You need to practice self-care. Prioritize your physical, emotional, and mental health. Because remember, when you're dealing with a child stuck in an adult's body, it's always their physical, emotional, and mental health that comes first, because they can't take care of themselves. They need a parent, a caretaker. So you need to prioritize your self-care. And this may include exercise, therapy, or spending time with supportive friends and family. And another thing you can try is exploring your sexuality, because this is something that's being neglected. I mean, if you're not being attended to sexually, which, remember, as human beings, we are sexual beings. So that side of you, that part of you is being neglected, which is, sexual needs are not being met. So what you could consider is exploring solo sexual satisfaction, such as masturbation. Or you could also try exploring non-sexual forms of intimacy with your partner. However, I would be careful with that, because that could play into what they want from you. Because remember, they like to breadcrumb you, and they like to neglect their partners, their victims. By neglecting you, they feel like they're dominating you and they've got power and control. So you might want to be careful with exploring non-sexual forms of intimacy with them. That could just trap you in a trauma bond. That could cause you even more problems with them. And because you're enabling them, it could cause them to become even more narcissistic, more overt, more grandiose, even more worse. Because then you're enabling their narcissistic behavior. And if you're enabling a narcissist behavior, it's not going to get better. If they're being enabled, they're going to get even more narcissistic. They're going to get even worse, even more disordered, even more emotionally and sexually ill. But again, seeking support can really help with these types of situations. Working with therapists, because a big part of this, when they're withholding sex, can be the sexual frustration. I mean, of course, that can be a horrible thing to go through. And I'm very sorry for anyone who's going through that at the moment. any sexual frustration, confusion. I mean, these are horrible emotions to have to experience. But working with a therapist can actually help you to process these emotions. And, sometimes it can feel like, you just want to have sex. You just want them to be sexually open. And it's like, that's the only possible way that you can resolve it. But it's kind of like one of those things where it's like you're climbing a mountain and you can't see the other side until you get there. So believe it or not, but having that talk therapy, working with a therapist, this can help to process the frustration and confusion. It's just that you won't realize it until you climb that mountaintop, until you get to the peak of it, and then you can see over it. And then everything's more clearer then. But also, I mean, you have to consider that long term, this is very unhealthy. It's very damaging to your body. We are emotional and sexual beings. So, this is more of a short-term solution, is to seek support, speak with a therapist. You could book with BetterHelp licensed therapists. Just go to betterhelp.com/Narc Survivor. And using that link helps to support our community. And you can also book a one-on-one with me on my website, which is narcsurvivor.co.uk. So those are two areas of support there. And also, there are support groups. You can find support groups online. We also have this community here as well. And, this can help you to feel less isolated and to give you practical advice from people who are experiencing similar challenges. Because I think, sometimes that can be a part of it as well, is when you feel like it's just you, and as though all of the other narcissists, they're being sexually intimate with their partners, and it's just the one that you're dealing with who's like that. And especially, we live in such a sexualized society today. It seems like everyone's having sex, everyone's having such a good time every day. Then it's just you who's on your own, and you don't have a good sex life. You're not being pleasured sexually. That it can really produce that fear of missing out. But it's actually not like that. Statistics show that 10% of people up to the age of 26 are still virgins. And people are actually having less sex today than ever before. And even, it's a very sexual society that we live in today, where you have all of this club culture. Is that really something that you feel like you're missing out on? If you feel like everyone else is being sexually intimate and you're not. I mean, I myself, from my own experience and, the way that I perceive it, is, I'm not really interested in women who are always so drunk and sloppy. And, to me, when I see a woman who's drunk, and even if she is interested in having sex, and I have experienced this many times throughout my life, where I've been to clubs and I had women who were all over me, and clearly, they wanted to go back to mine, or they wanted me to go back to theirs. And, I kind of teased them a bit, and, we just laughed and joked about it. But in the end, I just went home alone. And the reason for that is because I don't view that as consent. And maybe at the moment, things are still quite unclear. But I think in time, we will start to see that in the law. More to do with, alcohol and how women are being exploited. Is that How can someone consent when they've had that amount of alcohol? And, let's keep it real. A lot of these men, and of course, it can be women as well, I've experienced that myself, I think they do know when a person is drunk when they're not fully aware. They know that they're exploiting them. They know that this person might regret it, especially the next day, the next morning. So, that's why myself, I've kind of steered away from that in my own experience, because it's just not attractive to me. What's attractive to me is when there is consent, when the woman wants me, when she desires me, and when I know that she's conscious and aware. That's the biggest turn on for me, personally. And I'm sure it's the same for many of you. But, that's what it's like these days in the club culture. It's very manipulative, exploitative, both from women and men on both sides. And, to me, it's very sleazy, it's very sloppy, it's really not the kind of thing I want to be involved in. I haven't been to a club for years, and I haven't drunk alcohol for about 7 years. And I have no desire to go back to that type of environment. But, there can be this illusion that everyone else is having sex and you're not. And all of the other narcissists, they're giving their partners sex, but it's really not like that. If you look at the statistics, very few people are having sex these days. I mean, and, with men, on average, a man has just 7 sexual partners throughout their entire life. Just 7 sexual partners. And, just explore the reality of dating and dating apps. Just look at the YouTube videos about it, and you'll see most men out there are not having any dates, are not having any sex. We got 40-year-old, 50-year-old virgins. And most men, single men, they're lucky if they have sex like once a year, once every couple of years, or never. They're lucky if they even get 1 match a month on dating apps. This is the reality of the situation. So what's being promoted, in the club culture and in this sex-obsessed society, this tends to be more in extremes. When we're talking about like the rich and the famous and people who are maybe models, extremely attractive, these are the types of people who, they're getting a lot of matches, and they're having a lot of dates, they're having a lot of sex. And even then, it doesn't mean that it's any good, because it's all superficial, so it lacks connection. It lacks true fulfillment. As I said in my live video yesterday, is that true fulfillment, true love, true connection, that's rare. Empaths are rare. But yeah, join in a support group that can help you to feel less isolated. And it can provide practical advice from others who have experienced similar challenges. But what you may find with a narcissist is, despite how it may affect you, they will continue to dismiss your needs, and they will refuse to change. And, as I mentioned, our sexual needs, it's a need. Just like food, water, shelter, these are all needs. These are things that humans need. We need to feel safe, loved, comfortable. These are all needs, they're not wants. So, if your needs are being neglected, and this is a very serious thing, because I do feel like it's something where, I don't know if you've experienced this, if any of you have talked about this with people, but, I personally feel like this is, this should be a deal breaker for you. Even if, and actually this reminds me of a song. This reminds me of an English song going back about 20 years now. It's, what is it? Oh, what is it? Oh, it's a brilliant song. Sorry to just go off on this, but let me just check this song here. Because I remember the lyrics and oh, that's the one. Yeah. Lily Allen. Yeah, there's this really good song, Lily Allen, Smile. So those women who are going through this, you may want to have a listen to this this English song by a very famous singer from the UK. Her name is Lily Allen. It's a really good song, and it kind of talks about this dissatisfaction, lack of fulfillment, dealing with a narcissistic man. So definitely a song to check out, Lily Allen, I Smile. But yeah, it's a sexual need. So, as it talks about in the song, it touches on this. It's like, even if all of your other needs are being fulfilled, if there's one need that isn't being fulfilled, such as your emotional or sexual needs, you should consider leaving. You should consider calling it a day and ending the relationship, because your sexual needs are very important. So you need to weigh the costs. You need to ask yourself, is this relationship meeting your emotional and sexual needs? Or is it causing more harm than good? And then start to plan your exit. If you decide that it's no longer serving you, make a plan to leave safely, especially if they're very controlling and abusive. But I recommend that you do speak to a therapist or a coach first before you plan your exit, because they may seem very comfortable, they're getting supply from keeping you stuck, neglecting your sexual needs. They may feel very comfortable in that because they're getting supply from it. So when you then leave, you're cutting off their oxygen. You're cutting off their supply, because they were getting supply from that, from having the ability to deprive you sexually. It could have been a very potent source of supply for them. Especially if you're a powerful, successful, and attractive person. Remember, they're very backwards. They're just the opposite of how a human should be. But yeah, as I spoke about, there are alternatives to traditional intimacy. If you can't leave the relationship immediately, then you got to consider ways to cope with sexual frustration. And, I myself, I advise against cheating. That may be what they're pushing you to do. is to cheat, is to break your own values. And, you know, this type of behavior, of course, it can lead you into that direction. And I get that. I can understand. I mean, of course, you know, again, it's like, it's kind of like I saw this this video the other day. There was this case about these children who were being starved. These foster children, they were adopted. These 6 black children adopted by 2 lesbian women. And they were being starved for such a long time that they used to jump out of the window, sometimes off the 2nd floor, and go to the neighbor begging for food. Or they'd be looking in the trash of their own house, because they were being starved of food. So of course, you know, this kind of treatment, it can break your values, your morals, to where you then become desperate and you're just looking for any other way to, you know, to treat this this problem. So I get it, but you know, we just got to be strong. In these types of situations, we've got to focus on our character. We've got to find healthier coping strategies. Don't let yourself become like them, because that's what they want. They want you to end up like them, and I don't want that to happen for you. So, you know, let's talk about alternatives to traditional intimacy, such as non-sexual intimacy. You can build connection through shared hobbies, meaningful conversations, physical closeness, such as cuddling or holding hands. Again, I would be careful doing this with a narcissist, because you're enabling their narcissism. You're promoting and encouraging it, which could cause them to become even more disordered, and the abuse could escalate. So I would be careful with that with the narcissist. But you could have connection, hobbies, meaningful conversations with other people. And then there's also solo exploration. And the narcissist may blame and shame you for that as well. They may punish you for that. But, you know, that is your body. You're entitled to that. That is your right to explore solo exploration, masturbation. And yes, it can help you to fulfill your sexual needs independently of your partner. And remember, you know, we have to look at this from a mature way. The narcissists are very immature, and they will have an immature response to these types of things, and they may blame you, they may shame you, they may ridicule you, laugh at you. But it's really just a projection. It's because, you know, they fail to fulfill you. It's because of their condition. I mean, you know, you're watching this video, you're learning more about it, you are interested in having sex. They're not, so they're the ones with the problem, not you. You don't have an issue with it, they do. So remember that. Remember, it's a projection. And you know, this does remind me of a movie, actually, where because I remember there was a scene in I don't know if you know the movie American Beauty. This is from 1999. It's a comedy romance. Brilliant movie. Very well directed. It's a dark comedy drama. And it's highly controversial. Highly controversial movie because, you know, this man's wife is withholding sex from him. And then he develops this fantasy with his daughter's best friend, and they're just schoolgirls, because his wife is neglecting him, and he wants to have sex with his wife. And then he starts to explore sort of masturbation. Right? I think there was one scene where he's actually masturbated in bed next to his wife, and then he starts to develop these fantasies with this the schoolgirl who is his daughter's best friend. This can help as well, though, is to explore songs and movies that relate to this. Because it gives that sense of understanding and of not being alone. But yeah, recognize the red flags in sexual dynamics. Recognize that you may be being manipulated in intimacy. If they're using sex to punish or reward you, that is a form of control. That is not love. Love is freedom. It has nothing to do with control. And if they're gaslighting or blaming you, because like I said, this is what they will do. They will blame you for their lack of interest or their sexual issues. That is just absolutely insane, and it's so immature. But this is what they do. I mean, you may be desiring sex from them and they're withholding it from you. Or maybe you're forced to figure out some way to pleasure and satisfy yourself. Which again, that's great, to meet your sexual needs. That's what we should be doing as human beings. But again, they will blame you for that. They'll blame you for your lack of interest, for their lack of interest or their sexual issues, which is really just them being sexually immature. It just reveals their mental and emotional health issues, to where they're then projected it onto you. And it's got nothing to do with the truth. So if they're emotionally detached, if they consistently refuse to engage emotionally or sexually with you, it just shows that they're unwilling to address their own deeper issues. So they lack self-awareness, they're disconnected from themselves, they're disconnected from their emotions, and they show an avoidance of dealing with their own issues. That's all their problem. It doesn't reveal a problem with you, but it can become your problem the longer that you remain around them. This is why we talk about your sexual needs being a deal breaker, because otherwise, it's a form of abuse. It can harm you. And yet, sometimes they will ridicule you with this, they will make a laugh and joke about it. And, they're laughing and joking about abuse. It's not something to laugh and joke about. But this is maybe what they experienced in their childhood, is that they were abused. And maybe their narcissistic parent laughed and joked about it. But this is a serious topic, this is not something to be taken lightly. I mean, yes, being in a relationship with a narcissist can be sexually and emotionally dissatisfying. It can make you feel powerless, but you're not powerless, because you can focus on your needs, you can set boundaries, you can seek support, you can work towards improving the relationship or making a decision to move on if your needs remain unmet. Because your happiness and fulfillment are valid and deserve to be prioritized. But also, I mean, we got to take responsibility. We got to look at ourselves and think that maybe we might have some things to work on ourselves, because we are desiring sex from someone who is mentally and sexually ill. Someone who is mentally and sexually unhealthy, unwell. So As victims, we do have our own inner work to do. Especially if we are repeatedly finding ourselves desiring love, connection, or sex from someone who is unable to reciprocate in healthy ways. We've got to understand our patterns. We've got to explore our attachment styles. If it's insecure or anxious, where we're seeking validation or connection from emotionally unavailable partners. Now, if you're seeking validation or connection from emotionally available partners, now that's fine, that's healthy. But if you're seeking it from emotionally unavailable partners, then that reveals that there is a problem that we need to explore within ourselves. Because you should not be seeking validation or connection from someone like that. Only from someone who can be open and someone who is healthy. Someone who has a secure attachment style. And we need to develop a secure attachment style within ourselves as well. So to do that, we must recognize the trauma bond. If we've endured cycles of abuse and affection, which is common with narcissists, then we may be stuck in a trauma bond. And we need to assess our self-worth. Ask ourselves if we are seeking validation or self-esteem through the relationship. Because they will exploit people who struggle with self-worth by dangling affection as a reward. So we've got to reevaluate our desires, examine why we desire sex with them, and reflect on whether our sexual desire is rooted in genuine connection or simply just a need for approval, attention, or to fix the relationship. Acknowledge the reality, recognize that they just might not be capable of meeting your emotional and sexual needs, no matter how much you desire or work for it. Separate fantasy from reality. You may just be drawn to an idealized version of the narcissist, the person they seem to be during the love bombing phase. So when you recognize the illusion, it can help you to break unhealthy desires. And then you need to focus on building emotional awareness, recognizing your unmet needs. What deeper needs are you trying to fulfill with through sex with your partner? Are you seeking love, connection, validation, or power? By understanding this, it's going to help you to seek healthier ways to meet those needs. Also identify codependency. Maybe you're prioritizing their happiness or approval of your own well-being. Codependency can keep you stuck in an unhealthy relationship. So you need to heal underlying wounds, address past trauma, seek therapy, reclaim your autonomy, build a healthy relationship with sex, redefine sexual intimacy, reflect on what it means to you. Is it a way to connect emotionally for you in a healthy way, or does it feel transactional in this relationship? By redefining it, it can help you to prioritize healthy, fulfilling experiences. Reconnect with your body. Sexual frustration with a narcissist can disconnect you from your own pleasure. So you may want to consider exploring self-pleasure or therapy to rediscover your sexual needs and desires outside of the relationship. And long term, you really want to focus on mutuality. Because healthy sexual relationships, they're meant to be built on mutual desire, respect, and connection. So if these elements are missing, it is worth considering whether the relationship aligns with your values. They may have different values to you. For them, sex may not be about mutual desire, respect, or connection. For you, it is. So let them continue that with someone else, because something better is meant for you. That's why you need to learn to set boundaries, protect your energy. They can drain you emotionally and physically. But by you setting firm boundaries, it's going to help you to preserve your sense of self and to prevent further harm. By asserting your needs and communicating your expectations clearly, observing whether they're willing to meet you halfway. If they're not, then it may be time to rethink the relationship. Acknowledge your growth, forgive yourself. Of course, it can be easy to blame yourself for staying in a toxic relationship with a selfish narcissist. But you've got to remember that these dynamics are often deeply ingrained. So it can take time to heal and move past this. But together we will do that, and we will find people who are more like ourselves. People who do value mutual desire, respect, mutual connection, rather than traumatized children in adult bodies who are just all about themselves because they've got unresolved childhood trauma and arrested emotional development to where they react in such immature ways. So, all things to consider. And, I really hope that I have I brought some understanding to you. I brought some clarity because, I myself, abuse is a very serious thing for me. And I don't care what type of abuse it is. I don't care if it's sexual abuse. It's still a serious thing. It's not something to be taken lightly. You don't laugh at someone else's pain, what someone else is going through, their sexual frustration. Not as an adult. I mean, children, maybe teenagers in school, they may think that that's a joke. But as adults, we don't see it that way. Of course not. This is a serious thing, and it's also projection that is sewing in part of themselves and assigning them to you. Because you're ready, you're willing, you can experience sexual arousal and excitement, and that's a good thing. There's nothing bad about that. That's something to be proud of, that's something to celebrate. And they can't, so, if there's a joke about it, then the joke's on them. Because they're the ones who have the problem. They're the ones who are stuck in some unrealistic, grandiose fantasy. They just can't get their own heads out of their arse. So they're the ones who are the problem at the end of the day. It's not you. And that's what you need to remember. That's what you need to focus on. It's that you're ready, you're willing, you're capable. They're not. And that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. And that's what's going to maintain your confidence and your assurance in yourself. By recognizing that you are capable, you are functional, healthy, emotionally, sexually, physically, in every way. So, yeah. You're not the one with the issue, they are. And that's what you need to remember. So I hope that this video has brought you clarity and understanding. And, narcissists, they will continue to project onto you. They will continue to gaslight you. That's all that they can do. I mean, as I said, they're going to remain this way. They're going to remain with an arrested emotional development, sexual underdevelopment for the rest of their lives in most situations. So they will continue to blame, project, and gaslight you. Because that's all that they can do. Rather than to go within and resolve their deep issues. So, you might want to save this video so that you can watch it again, because they're not going to change. And you may also want to book a session with me, or you can also book with BetterHelp as well. BetterHelp.com/Narc Survivor. I'm partnered with them. You can book with me on my website, narcsurvivor.co.uk. Seek support, and let's get you out of this situation, because you deserve a healthy, better, satisfying, more fulfilling sex life. That's what you deserve. You don't deserve this with a narcissist. You deserve better treatment than that. So, focus on getting out of it. Focus on moving from it. And things will get a lot better for you. So I hope this has helped, and if it has, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. I read your comments every day. Subscribe and click all notifications so that you will be notified when I go live again. And donations are greatly appreciated, no matter how small. You can donate through my PayPal. It's paypal.me/Narc Survivor. Follow me on Instagram. It is Narc Survivor YouTube. Just live in the city here. I'm going to go to the gym, do a workout. Always focusing on self-love and self-care, building myself up, taking good care of myself. That's what we need to do. Prioritize self-love and self-care. So yeah, thank you all for joining me on another Narc Survivor live video. And I will talk to you soon.